This is Jim Granddad Nunley, and I'm here with the Monday Night Footballers podcast. And I'm also having another guest today, but be fellow Monday Nighter Ed West, who is has the distinction of having been the only Kansas Cityan in our community to ever play in a national collegiate championship game. That was back in 1957, and he was playing with Emporia State.
Oh, Lord. Don't say that again. Pittsburgh State.
Pittsburgh State. I always say Emporia, don't I? And he said, "Don't ever say that again." But anyway, that's a little private joke between us because I always think of Emporia, and then I write in there Emporia, and therefore knowing full well that it's Pittsburgh, and that's Pittsburg, right? State.
Good. No H.
H, no H, no H. Yeah. But anyway, we're going to talk to Ed in a bit here. But first, we're going to start off and talk to one of the writers here at the Kansas City Call, and that is Trevor. And Trevor, what we want you to do is to kind of begin to bridge the intergenerational gap that we have created in this society, which makes old people older and young people dumber. What would you say to that?
It's a very good way to put that. Um, for me personally, I respect my elders a great deal. Without the elders, we really don't have no foresight or vision or experience. Yeah, the young generation, including myself, yeah, we got the fire, but we might not have a vision, So I think it's important that we do try to keep that intact because without it, it's just nothing but chaos. So, and that's the truth about the situation.
Where there is no order, there's disorder.
Yes, indeed. That's true.
Anyway, and we're going to talk a bit here to Ed West again, who we just announced that he's part of the Monday Night Footballers. But more importantly, Ed, I like the part about introducing you about being the only Kansas City and walking around now that has played in a national championship game, collegiate championship game. What did it feel like back in 1957 when you were a youngster?
There were a lot of things that happened that year, like when we were 11-0, undefeated, and then when they said we were going to play a national championship game in St. Petersburg, Florida, I was wondering how in the heck are we going to get to St. Petersburg, Florida? I've never been on an airplane before in my life, and so it occurred, and we did fly down to St. Petersburg, and it was a very exciting game. The team that we played was Hillsdale, Michigan, and they were undefeated 42 games in a row. They were on a 42-game winning streak, and we were, back in the day, segregated a little bit in that
A little bit.
in that the white portion of our team stayed in a big hotel, and we stayed in a private family home of a couple who lived there in St. Petersburg.
And so they green booked you.
Yeah, and it was turned out to be a much better situation for us. There were actually four of us, two from Hillsdale. Their cheerleader and their star quarterback were black, so they were with us at the hotel.
Looking for a home.
Yeah, and the white guys every night they had to go through bed check Uh, they had eyes on them 24/7, and we were just left kind of free. So the couple that we stayed with had a big brand new Buick, and they said, "You guys want to take off and just go see the city? Here are the keys." So he gave us the keys to his car, and we drove all over St. Petersburg for a whole week partying while they were going through heck.
So there were some benefits to being black.
Exactly.
All right. But like, was it overwhelming to have all the TV cameras and stuff like that? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was not really overwhelming because Pitt State, they were pretty up to date on facilities.
The gorillas, if I remember.
Yeah, the gorillas. And so we were used to seeing cameras and doing interviews and stuff like that, but just not in that high profile situation.
Very good. We're talking to Ed West here, who still represents one of the very few people in the world that had played in a National Collegiate Championship game. And he did it back in 1957. And of course, we always use the word octogenarian to refer to ourselves. And these are people who are in their 80s, which make up the majority of the Monday Night Footballers. In other words, all of us are octogenarians, 80 or above, but more importantly, around that age. So we think different. And one of the main objectives that we want to do this podcast is begin to bridge the gap between the younger people, like you, Trevor, for example, and also to keep up, to keep up with each other, because where we're losing the game, I feel, is in handing off the generation background to one another. It's like we're born all over again, and being born, we're just subject to whatever is new. Now, we've become kind of used to being at the back of the line or fighting our way to the top, but by the time we get to the top, or by the time we are allowed to get to the top, then that game is over, so we have to start over. And we've talked with Harry Seipert here in the past about these kind of things, and we have written in the Kansas City Call newspaper, which was way around in civil rights days. It's now over 100 years old, and they have always talked about civil rights. Well, we in the Monday Night Footballers have kind of challenged that, and also write about what we think as older people and being able to hand that off to the younger generation. And Trevor, that's why you're here, but more importantly, Ed, that's part of what we want to do today, is to hand off to Trevor some of the jewels that we know. But one of the things I wanted to go back to is that our younger people don't know a thing about segregation. Does that bother you, Ed?
Well, yeah, it bothers me because if you don't know your history, you have no control over your future.
Ooh, man, that was a good one. I'm going to mark that one down.
Yeah, I'm going to put a couple of marks because I don't know where that came from.
Well, that's what we are, heart to heart. And, and many of the things that people ask us, along the way is that what do we do at a Monday Night Footballers meeting? Because we have been meeting now over 55 years, same guys for the most part. Some of them have passed on, but we're passing on, and we've written about it in order to pass it on to the next generation for people like Trevor to know what we talked about, what issues we're facing in our language, not in language that somebody told us to say. It's kind of like the Pledge of Allegiance. Isn't it funny how you won't say the Pledge of Allegiance any other way other than what you've been taught? And I know that one of our Monday Nighters, Ike Gardner, who you were very good friends with, refused to stand for the Monday Night Football long before Kyle Carpenter.
Right.
And it was in the early 60s when the Chiefs came to town. 1963, is that right, Harry? And they played over on 22nd Brooklyn, right in the middle of the black neighborhood. And so what struck me as a health professional was that there was no crime committed on any days that there was a football game. And so now nobody wants to recognize that, but I went through, when I was in the prosecutor's office in the county, I went through all the records and whatever, and crime would dip to zero in our community when there was a Chiefs football game. So I bring that up to tell you that don't nobody say that in the Chiefs organization, but don't nobody know that but us. And we've got to get those kind of things out because they kind of trouble us with the designation that we commit crime. And we commit crime when we want to commit crime.
At halftime.
That's good. But Ed, you remember that. And of course, Harry Cypress has joined us here in the studio. And Harry, we're going to be ready for you in just a second. But what kind of times did you struggle with in this segregation period? They called it segregation. The South Africans call it apartheid. The Jamaicans call it something else. But it all means that you ain't nothing even though you're present. You ain't nothing. You're not to be recognized. You can't vote, or you have to be told everything to do it. And we have learned how to play dumb better than anything that we've ever learned. And we're not dumb. I mean, it don't. But what's your thought on that, Harry? And then we're going to get Trevor in here, and then we're going to get Mr. Harry Seifert, that Harry Seifert in here. Okay, go ahead. What you think? It's you.
Oh, excuse me. Well, as far as not being able to vote and not being able to, I didn't experience that myself, but I can just imagine that the pressure was pretty intense back then. I can just imagine, just looking at the way things are now and what I've experienced myself. Not being able to use a certain bathroom or sit in a certain seat, or if I want to get on the bus, I gotta get to the back, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I don't know what that feels like, but I can just imagine that that's just a whole nother level of stress to be able to have to deal with. Yeah.
Well, it is that, and it's just as confusing as you sounded when you were saying it.
Right.
Because we live right on the cusp of that, which is why we always stress how old we are.
Right.
Because it's a signal that we live through the best of times and the worst of times. And so, we're not that bothered by what's happening now because, as the spiritual says, we've seen it all before. Now, that doesn't mean it ain't serious.
Right.
It don't mean that we ain't ducking and dodging, but it means that we ain't that upset about it because we done ducked and dodged. What did you find most difficult, Ed, living in that period? Now, you're a small-town Kansas boy.
Yeah, I'm from Osawatomie.
Osawatomie.
And it's odd because I don't remember being that affected by, those restrictions because the town was so small. We did everything that everybody did pretty much. Things that were not allowed to do, we didn't even know that we could do them in the first place. Like eating in a restaurant. My mom would go crazy if I said I wanted to spend $5 to go eat at a restaurant because we don't have $5 to spend on a burger in a restaurant. We got a burger right here on the kitchen table, and so a lot of the things that occurred in, like when I went to Lincoln High School as a teacher, was just, that's when I hit more segregation than anything, is when I went into a segregated school as a teacher. But I had skills that I had gained from the Osawatomie experience, which allowed me to be able to navigate that in a positive manner.
They said when you were running at in the National Collegiate game that you were a lot smaller, but you were the fastest guy on the field. Is that true?
that would be true.
That would be true. You ain't gonna take. You're gonna take a bow with that.
Well, I had one of my my tackles. He was about 6'6", weighed about 280, and at practice, I always had to run against him. It was done on purpose, and he told me one day. He says, "You know what? You're the only guy in the world I know that can run into my arms and then run out before I can close them." I said, "Well, you see how big them arms are? That's the reason."
But this bifurcation on this living in two worlds is really something that we have to teach our young people. Would you agree with that? Because it's not one way or the other. It's all of that together and then some.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's just no way you can teach it. You just have to live it. And that's why sometimes when we see somebody come along in this world and they talk about eradicating us or separating us, we've been through it all before. And you mentioned going to a national collegiate championship game and having to live separately from the team because you were black. That's unheard of today. I mean, we don't even know about that, but we actually lived through those times. As a matter of fact, I'm beginning to wonder, you probably were one of the first blacks to be at Pittsburgh State, right?
Oh no,
No?
Pittsburgh State is in the corner down there by Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, but our schools were fully integrated. They were not segregated.
But you said a very minute ago, since there was only a few of you, it wasn't hard to integrate.
Well, yeah, that's true. We didn't have to worry about no large crowds of protests or anything like that.
You see, I was born in the same era, and I went to the University of Missouri, but from a segregated school, segregated high school, because you remember there were some people that just chose to keep segregation for a long time. As a matter of fact, now, some 60 or 70 years later, we're still talking about school segregation and whatever. But anyway, we're here on the podcasters for the Monday Night Football, and we're going to get more into football talk here. But it is a very important concept to think about while you're listening to us, is that we don't just talk about football. For 55 years, we've been talking about everything. And I think the only thing we haven't talked about is probably President Trump, and that's because we're somewhere between very afraid and wise not to treat it. I can't believe it's happening. But we've been through it before, and we'll do it again. But anyway, one of the things that we do predict is football games, and we've got one coming up here with the Jacksonville Jaguars in Florida. And of course, the Chiefs are down. Why do you think the Chiefs are down this year? They're 2-2, and usually they're, for the last 5 to 8 years, they've been at the top of their game. What do you think? Is there something wrong with the Chiefs, or is there just an adjustment? And why don't you come up here, Harry, because, we know how you feel. And you know what?
How do I feel?
Yeah, how do you feel about the Chiefs? Are they as good as they used to be, or is something happening?
Talent's catching up.
They said the talent is catching up with. I noticed in your predictions that you said that the Chiefs will beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. Is that right?
Yes, the Chiefs will win, but I should have thought about it more. But Jacksonville has a good running game. Plus, Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. He has a strong arm, and he's just been having a lot of bad luck, like Hewitt out at the Chargers. They have a good quarterback. They have a quarterback that's usable.
And Ed, you said that the Kansas City will change the Jacksonville Jaguars into putty cats.
I didn't say that.
No, I said Ed.
Oh, okay.
Ed.
I said that.
Yeah. I know what you said. There, that's what gets us into trouble. I tell you what, if you'd have been living where Ed was trying to go down there at the collegiate game in Florida, they would have locked you up for the weekend. But go ahead, Ed. What do you think? You said that the Chiefs will change them. Change.
Yeah, the Chiefs are going to dominate them. You know, their mental problems that they've had the first few games, I think, is being whittled away. By that last game, our offense has started to come back. We are going to have more help each week, and when we get our full complement of players, they are going to be difficult to then deal with.
So you're not worried?
No, I'm not worried. And as you can see, just by looking at the games that occurred yesterday, some of those other teams that were winning so much ain't winning. The Chargers went down. Is that a Trader jersey he got on over there?
He's still talking about them damn Raiders. You got that hat on.
Yeah. Well, they never were they never were the problem, but they're going to be even less of a problem.
Well, they say when Trump comes after the black people, he's gonna get you first. No offense, Harry. You know you're an octogenarian too. What are you? 78 now? Yeah, you're almost 80, so you're almost grown up.
You'll be coming in as I go out.
Yeah. And you know they canceled his birth certificate, Trevor. He's such an outspoken person.
I was outspoken back in the day, back in segregation.
Yeah, that's why you up here talking trash because you couldn't talk it down there. Right, all right. We're talking to Harry Seipert and Easy Ed West, and they both are football fanatics, and we talk about a lot of things other than football. Like today, we've been talking about what it was like to be in segregated times. And, of course, by living in segregated times, there's still a little bit of that in us. You know, we don't feel right. Like, I don't feel right going into a restaurant. I look around and see how many other black people are in there. And I always manage to go speak to them because I want them to know if something go down that I want to find out if they're going to help me or whether they're going to hurt me or turn me in or whatever. I don't know. But anyway, it's something that just stays with you forever. You know, you just can't get rid of that feeling that, you know, it's we versus them, or at least they ain't all for us. You know, that thing they used to say, all for one and all for us, or whatever it used to say. It ain't so, y'all. It ain't so. So anyway, I wanted to say that my predictions for the Jaguars was that the Chiefs will win by 16, and that game is tonight in Florida, in Jacksonville, Florida, and the Chiefs are there. But Ed, I would be remiss if I didn't mention something that you said or observed way back 9 years ago when Pat Mahomes was just being sort of tutored into the leadership or becoming the great quarterback he's become 9 seasons ago. And one of the things you observed was that after every game well, you tell the story.
After every play, during the changeover from offense to defense, Pat and Andy would be somewhere in the back sitting down. Andy's teaching
Every
concepts, mistakes. What do we do next? You know, they were strategizing after every play, and once they got through that year, then I think he let Pat go, and he pretty much does all that by himself. But that's how he gained so much knowledge in such a short period of time, because I've seen those playbooks from the pros, and one playbook is 6 inches thick, and I don't care if you're a genius or if you're offense or defense, whichever one, you have to know that complete playbook for all of the positions, not just your own. So it's that's why they get paid the big bucks.
One other thing I want to mention, and then we're going to give the rest of this time to Trevor. You when you spent a little time in L.A. among the stars, and of course I used to like to hear you talk about O.J. Simpson and the lady on the dancer from Paula Abdul-Jabbar. No,
Paula Abdul. Period. No, no Jabbar.
It slipped out there, didn't it?
Yeah.
But anyway, how did you find California? Now that means that you've been in rural Kansas, did most of your professional career here in Kansas City, but end up on the West Coast where everything is even more different than the two of those. Tell me how that was for you.
Well, that was amazing because my son, Damon Thomas, was a music producer. He did all the music for the movie Dreamgirls. He did several movies, and when we moved out there and hung out with him for 5 years, and we got to meet a lot of people like Paula Abdul. She lived right across the street. Several movies mostly recording audiences. I mean, recording whatever you call them people that do recording. But we got tired of all the problems that were happening in L.A. Like when we got there, there was the biggest drought in the world in L.A. After the first year, it started raining. We had the biggest mudslides that they've ever had. Then you had OJ going up and down the 405. And then you had the one that got beat up. Yeah. So after all that, we said, we're going back home to Kansas City where it's very quiet compared to this out here. So
No wonder you so messed up.
That's right, man.
Were you and Harry? I don't think you as messed up as Harry is, but that's not a compliment either. Well, anyway, we're gonna pull together here and get some finer things here. You were talking about Kim Kardashian out at that time, and you remember I mentioned OJ. Our younger generation, Trevor, has no idea who OJ was or what he did, or do you know?
O.J. Simpson?
Uh-huh.
Yes, I'm aware of it.
You're aware?
Yes.
So there are some things, but we felt like we knew OJ, because that was one time OJ couldn't squirm his way out of that.
Yeah.
He ran for 2,000 yards in the NFL, but he couldn't wiggle his way out of that one. But he did eventually get free.
Yes.
Do you remember what the topic was?
About him killing his wife.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Now, I might not be able to go too in depth with it, but I do know some about it. Johnny Cochran is a large thanks to him being able to get out of that situation. Well, not completely get out, because he still deals with, people still have an issue with that, and a lot of people feel like, well, he did it and this and that, but I mean, yeah.
What's Ben's name today? Ben, the lawyer that kind of goes around and defends. Ben Crump, yeah. Well, he replaced Johnny Cochran. Because you remember what Johnny Cochran said about the glove, that the killer was wearing the glove, and he said, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And maybe that's what we got to do here as we draw to an end here. You've been listening to the Monday Night Footballers, but most importantly, we've got Trevor here to kind of sit in beside us here, and we've got that Harry Seibert to always take a alternate view, and in that damn Raiders cap. And so we want to be back next week to do it all over again, where we keep doing this about what's going on with the Monday Night Footballers. See you then. Bye-bye.